Welcome to another edition of the Magic Latest podcast where we discuss everything Orlando Magic basketball. I'm your host, Jalon Dixon, and today we're going to talk about the impact of the Kevin Durant trade on the Orlando Magic going into next season, a potential backup point guard target that we are going to be looking at for free agency, and the way too early NBA Finals odds and way too early NBA power rankings have been dropped going into the NBA draft and NBA offseason. We're going to discuss all of that and more. Let's get it. Let's start with the Kevin Durant trade and how everything lines up for the Magic, right? Kevin Durant trade sends Kevin Durant from Phoenix to the Houston Rockets in exchange for Jalen Green, Dillon Brooks, the 10th overall pick in the 2025 NBA draft, and 5 future second round picks. What does that mean for the Orlando Magic? The Orlando Magic now have solidified themselves as a top 3 team in the Eastern Conference on paper. You take out Tyrese Halliburton, who will miss next season, more than likely with a torn Achilles tendon that he unfortunately suffered in the Game 7 of the NBA Finals. Jason Tatum, who is already said to miss next season due to tearing his right Achilles tendon during this postseason. And Damian Lillard, who also tore his Achilles tendon during this postseason as well, which significantly weakens the Indiana Pacers, the Boston Celtics, and the Milwaukee Bucks. The Milwaukee Bucks also have their own problem of having to address the Giannis Antetokounmpo issue, and the Boston Celtics are in the midst of having to discuss potential trades that are going to involve Jaylen Brown, Derek White, Drew Holiday, and or Kristaps Porzingis in order to get their books back in order, given the fact that they are significantly over the second apron and are a team that cannot make too many flexible moves given how expensive their roster is right now. That leaves teams like the New York Knicks and the Cleveland Cavaliers as two of the biggest foes, along with the Detroit Pistons if they're able to build on what they did this past season. And then the next team in the midst of that was supposed to be a team like the Miami Heat. If you paired Kevin Durant with Bam Adebayo, Tyler Hero, and the cap flexibility that the Miami Heat tend to always create in big off seasons like this where there's a ton of potential movement, the Miami Heat had a chance, along with that big three, to create a starting 5 and a legitimate short man rotation that would make them one of the better teams in the Eastern Conference. Do they still have the chance to be that in this weakened version of the East? Yes, but without Kevin Durant, it makes things a lot easier on a team like the Orlando Magic to solidify themselves around that top 3 spot. So I think that that's the main thing that you have to take away is that not only is the Southeast Division specifically, because of course the Miami Heat are in the same division as the Orlando Magic, but of course divisions don't matter as much in NBA basketball. So the more important thing is that I think this solidifies the Orlando Magic as a team that not only has the expectations of a top 4, top 5 seed next season, but a team that should be considered as one of the favorites to come out of the Eastern Conference next year. Part of that also is because they are going after one of my favorite backup point guards in the NBA, Tyus Jones, a guy who is a walking 10-6, one of the players that has one of the best, if not one of the best personal. I think he actually has one of the best assist to turnover ratios in NBA history over the last 5 seasons, something like 5-1, 4-1, something along those lines. He's one of the better backup point guards in terms of taking care of the ball, helping you run off offenses in half-court sets. And he's also been a player that's shown that when he plays on a contending team, rather than being on a team like the Washington Wizards last season, when he played for the Memphis Grizzlies, unironically, he would be re-teaming up with a player in Desmond Bane, so they would have a real kind of rapport. He was one of the better backup point guards in the league just 2 or 3 seasons ago when Ja Morant was missing significant time, and the Memphis Grizzlies still had a positive win record in his absence, right? So, me personally, I think that Tyus Jones is the perfect backup point guard for this team. Why is that? Not just because of how he's able to take care of the ball, but because he's proven on a winning team that he can play strong basketball, operate within a system, get guys to where they need to be, have big games in situations where their star players are not producing to a high enough level. And of course, the biggest thing is he provides point guard depth behind Jalen Suggs, which is really important given the fact that Jalen Suggs has a significant injury history that includes the fact that just last season he played less than 40 games, right? So you pair that with the fact that he also can be a good fit offensively next to Anthony Black, who's more of a defensive style point guard. And now you have a legitimate guard rotation of Tyus Jones, Desmond Bane, Jalen Suggs, and Anthony Black. And the pairing works perfectly because Tyus Jones can play next to Jalen Suggs, Tyus Jones can play next to Desmond Bane, and he can play next to Anthony Black in any iteration and still be a accomplished and very flexible point guard in terms of either having to take more initiative as a scorer or take more initiative as a setup man, just that kind of gets everybody to where they're supposed to be at. So with that being the case, Tyus Jones kind of perfectly fits seamlessly on a team like this that desperately needs more direction, especially operating in the half court. Let's also throw in there that Tyus Jones is a league average to above league average three-point shooter, which adds yet again some more three-point shooting from the perimeter for a team that desperately needs it. Not only do I believe that Tyus Jones is a good fit for the Orlando Magic, I think this is the one perfect signing the Orlando Magic could make to build off of this Desmond Bane trade, given the fact that they only have the taxpayer MLE. What that is the mid-level exception that they have acquired, that they have at their disposal for $5.6 million. And given the fact that Paolo Banchero and his extension is coming up, Franz Wagner is locked up long-term, Jalen Suggs is locked up long-term, and Desmond Bane are locked up long-term for a significant amount of money, the mid-level exception is really the only bit of cap flexibility they have right now outside of trading a guy like Goga Bataglia off their books or somebody like Wendell Carter or the combination of the two, right? So with $5.6 million going after a redemption project in Tyus Jones, who kind of got lost in the shuffle playing for a Washington Wizards team that was not that good and significantly young and was trying to actually see how much they could get out of their starting point guard or their soon-to-be starting point guard in Bub Carrington, who they drafted last year. Tyus Jones can seamlessly come into the Orlando Magic and do everything that he did for a Memphis Grizzlies team just 2 seasons ago and present that on an Orlando Magic team that's going to be walking into an Eastern Conference that's never been anywhere close to as wide open as it is going into next year. Mind you, this Orlando Magic team has a much easier pathway towards making significant strides in the postseason than that Memphis Grizzlies team ever had the chance of doing, even with Ja Morant playing at a near MVP level, with Triple J being a Defensive Player of the Year candidate and winner, and of course you have the fact that Desmond Bane was a high-level third option. But that was in a tough Western Conference where you have Steph Curry with the Warriors, where you have LeBron James, and now you have Luka Doncic with the Los Angeles Lakers. Obviously, you have your Thunder, the Houston Rockets. The Sacramento Kings had a flash-in-the-pan season and always have a chance to bounce back. The San Antonio Spurs are coming. You could just continue to go down that list and tell yourself, if you want to get significant minutes as a backup point guard for a team that has a real chance to come out of their conference, Tyus Jones might be a match made in heaven for this Orlando Magic team. And I think if they don't get anything accomplished for the rest of this offseason, you need to knock down 2 things. You need to get that extension done with Paolo Banchero, which all news is reported that he will be getting his extension done like pretty much as soon as humanly possible. And then the other thing is, this has to be the guy. I think Tyus Jones is the perfect piece. Tyus Jones or Ty Jerome. But I would say Tyus Jones should be that guy that they go after with that taxpayer mid-level exception. And I mean, I think that would make a perfect offseason for them, given the fact that they don't have too much more flexibility. So let's get into the way too early 2026 NBA title odds. Fanatics Sportsbook dropped their recent odds after the NBA Finals, and more so updated them after the injury news related to Tyrese Halliburton that we covered in the beginning of the show. The Orlando Magic started out with the 12th best odds around 16 to 1. About 16, 18 to 1. Then, after that, they shot up to which 16 to 1, by the way, put them kind of middle of the pack at the time. Then, after the Tyrese Halliburton injury update came out, they shot up to a 22 to 1 odds. What that means in sportsbooks terms, given the rest of the layout, is they shot up from about the 10th to 12th best odds to win the title next year, all the way up to the 6th best odds. For context even further, the only teams ahead of the Orlando Magic in the title odds are the Oklahoma City Thunder to repeat at a plus 220, the Houston Rockets, who of course just acquired Kevin Durant, at a plus 800, along with the Cavaliers, who are also at a plus 800, the New York Knicks at plus 850, the Minnesota Timberwolves at 10 to 1 odds, and then the Orlando Magic at 22 to 1. Man, oh man. This only doubles down to what I was saying before about this being a perfect offseason storm for them. And we talked about this last episode when we talked about what Chandler Parsons mentioned for this team just having everything kind of flowing in their favor with these first couple of acquisitions to kick off what should be a very eruptive offseason full of, different trade acquisitions and players changing teams. The Orlando Magic have a lot of pressure on themselves already going into an offseason where they don't have too much more that they can do. They maybe could sign a player with that taxpayer mid-level, like I mentioned beforehand, and maybe trade a player or a combination of players like Wendell Carter Jr., Jonathan Isaac, and Goga Batadze. But other than that, this is their team, essentially. They are expected to go into this offseason, shore up the things that they can, and then go into the 2025-2026 season as a team that looks to build off of the last 2 years where they've been tough first round outs against the Boston Celtics and the Cleveland Cavaliers. And this is a window that not only have all the stars really aligned for them to take this next jump, but they also have the personnel that says they're more than capable of doing so. And with that being the case, I actually want to jump to my last topic because the NBA Finals odds and the NBA Power Ranking odds kind of go hand in hand. According to Bleacher Report's most recent way too early power rankings going into the NBA offseason, the Orlando Magic are the 10th best team in the NBA. And they are the 3rd best team in the Eastern Conference, again only behind the Cleveland Cavaliers and the New York Knicks. What's funny about this is that the Orlando Magic are already relatively well built to be able to take on a team like the New York Knicks. They are already relatively well built defensively to compete with the defensive versatility of the New York Knicks. They are already well built enough offensively to take advantage of the lack of size at the point guard position that they have with Jalen Suggs and the kind of wing depth to be able to really bring guys like Karl Anthony Towns out on the perimeter and force them to guard out in space, which we saw Karl Anthony Towns continuously get picked on throughout the postseason on defense in that very manner, right? I think that Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner match up very well against Karl Anthony Towns. I think that the combination of Mo Wagner offensively and Goga Batadze, or Mo Wagner and Jonathan Isaac combined, can do a really strong defensive job on a Precious Achiuwa and a Karl Anthony Towns on that side of the ball. And they have the defensive infrastructure with Anthony Black, with Desmond Bane, with Jalen Suggs to be able to guard against somebody like Jalen Brunson and be kind of like what the Indiana Pacers were defensively with Andrew Nembhard and Aaron Nesmith, defensively just making everything difficult on Jalen Brunson over the course of 7 games. And we've also seen 2 seasons ago that the Orlando Magic, without legitimate perimeter shooting for what's now 2 seasons back-to-back, they pushed the Cleveland Cavaliers to 7 games. Right? And that was their first time in the postseason at the time as this unit with Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner leading the way. And more so, again, this is another situation where they're still trying to develop an offensive identity. You add Desmond Bane, you bring in a player like Tyus Jones, you add the fact that Jalen Suggs should hopefully be healthy and hopefully players like Franz Wagner and Paolo Banchero have a better bill of health as well. This is huge. This is a huge leap for a team in the Orlando Magic, who just last season were kind of the surprise squad along with the Detroit Pistons as 2 of the better performing young teams in the Eastern Conference. And now they're positioning themselves to be considered as a top 3 team in the Eastern Conference with a roster that's well built enough to arguably make them the best team considerably in the East on paper. Especially when you have to still consider that the future of the Cleveland Cavaliers isn't completely sealed because Darius Garland's on the trade block and Jared Allen is on the trade block. 2 huge pieces to what made them a 50-plus, 60-plus win team over the last 2 years, right? So the Orlando Magic not only on paper are considered as one of the better teams in the Eastern Conference, but now they're on paper considered as one of the better teams in the NBA. And the question I have to ask is the media too hype around them? Is the media kind of putting a fuel to this fire a little too early? In a sense, I would say yes, because there's still so many moving pieces this offseason. But in another sense, I would say no. And the reason why I say no is because when you think about the teams that legitimately have cap space to make any real changes this offseason, it's really only the Brooklyn Nets, the Detroit Pistons, and the Utah Jazz. Those are the only 3 teams that really can make a blockbuster acquisition in terms of signing a player that could make any type of real noise. And none of those three teams, maybe the Detroit Pistons, if they put together a trade package that could also absorb a player like Devin Booker or Darius Garland for that matter, right? Maybe. The Brooklyn Nets are nowhere near contention, and the Utah Jazz are nowhere near contention, so they're not going to make any types of real moves. The Detroit Pistons could go after a Darius Garland, a Lauri Markkanen, and there's a lot of different options for them. They are an interesting team to watch if I'm the Orlando Magic as another team that could kind of get in the way if we're talking about the Eastern Conference hierarchy. The Orlando Magic have positioned themselves by striking first and getting Desmond Bane early in this offseason. They have set themselves up to be considered as the one of, if not the most stable title contending team in the Eastern Conference. I mean, let's go down the list, right? Boston Celtics, potentially going to have to move off of at least one, if not two, of the four other starters outside of Jason Tatum that played not only just the majority of this year, but was a part of their title team. Not to mention Jason Tatum's not playing next year. The New York Knicks fired Tom Thibodeau and have been calling coaches up that are already secured under other organizations trying to pooch them away. And now we're going into the offseason without a head coach, right? The Indiana Pacers are going to be without Tyrese Halliburton next season. The Cleveland Cavaliers have to define their future on Darius Garland and Jared Allen. The Miami Heat are not sure whether or not they're going to be going for title contention or going into a full-blown retooling around Tyler Hero and Bam Adebayo, because without acquiring Kevin Durant, there are not too many other superstar caliber players that are going to put them over the hump in the way that a guy like KD could do, right? The Detroit Pistons are one of those teams that, because we've only seen them be this successful for one season, we don't necessarily know who they are just yet. Behind Cade Cunningham, could they just be another iteration of what we saw as a one-season flash in the pan with the Sacramento Kings a few seasons ago? Only time will tell. The Atlanta Hawks are not super certain because Trae Young's been in trade rumors for the last 2 to 3 seasons, including trade rumors to the said Orlando Magic. Like, when you go down the list, the Orlando Magic, not only having this starting five on paper being so good, but paired with the fact that they established it so early, they might be the most competent team going into this postseason of anybody in the Eastern Conference. And with that being the case, I think all the hype around the Orlando Magic should be exactly where it is. And I think that the Orlando Magic, I will go as far as to say, coming off of what was worthy of a potential Coach of the Year winning season for Jamal Mosley, I believe that this is going to be a hot seat season for Jamal Mosley, for them to not only just get out of the first round, but make a legitimate title push in a season that seems well slated for the Eastern Conference to be as wide open as we've ever seen it. And this was prior to the Tyrese Halliburton injury. So now it's become even more wide open, which leaves a team like the Orlando Magic, who are not only young, battle-tested, but also now have put themselves in position to address some of their biggest issues going into this into this offseason. This is a team that has to produce in the 2025-2026 season. With that being the case, this is another edition of the Magic Latest Podcast. I will be back with you guys tomorrow to bring even more news and more thoughts about the Orlando Magic going into what should be an exciting NBA draft, where, remember, the Orlando Magic have the 25th overall pick, and I believe they have another pick at around the mid-40s in the second round as well. Should be an interesting NBA draft in a couple of days. Until then, I'll see you guys next time. Peace.